We have seen customers who chose a shared drive as their storage medium and then have millions literally of ADK files without having any clue of how to restore them.
What is the growth trend?
Right.
For example, if I have a top growing table and that table is not growing, then that's not a potential candidate, right? The end user perspective, they wanted to store the attachment. They choose different options, right? Some attachments are coming through Fiori app, some attachments going to DMS, some attachments going to softcon table. In real time, the attachments or the unstructured data is spread across multiple locations.
It's amazingly efficient design because it's seamless. People can still access the data. Nothing changes. They don't have to worry about what they are archiving. Just archive it, right?
Absolutely.
It gets out of your system, helps your performance, but you cannot access the data outside. I have seen customers who have more Z table data than in regular transaction.
Yes.
It's just very common,
yes.
right?
Most of the Z table doesn't have a clear documentation.
Very true.
What it holds, because it was built some time ago to fill some process gap, right? And nobody touched it, right? Now when it goes to S4HANA migration, RISE and all these things, then the box got opened and then got into trouble. Now the question is, what am I going to do?
Hello and welcome all to today's session on the Archivist. I have here with me Mr. Jagadeesh. He heads our SAP practice.
Yeah, thanks, Karkavel. So SAP archiving is a core critical activity which any customer is supposed to perform. Otherwise, what is happening over a period of time, it creates too much of burden to any organization. Because of that, it creates a lot of performance issues and data gets blowed away, and then so these are all the side effects of any organization which is not keeping their archiving as a mandatory thing. So hence archiving is very mandatory. Whosoever running SAPs for a decade or more.
Very true, very true. But how does SAP, the product, has archiving set up within itself? What is your thought?
So SAP as a product, they have a standard way of doing archiving, right? Let's say a standard archiving or the ILM framework or whatever, right? So, but
tell me a little about how standard archiving works.
So the standard archiving always works in a object basis. Let's say if you have a finance module or a materials objects, right? So those archiving happens in the table level. So what is happening is when you implement a standard archiving approach, it does archiving, but at the end of the day, the data should move out of your SAP system.
How does it do the archiving?
Typically, when I perform archiving, I define what tables are highly consumed. Which is, let's say, typically if you have 5 terabytes of data, in that I need to identify what are the top tables,
right.
Out of which, what is the growth trend?
Right.
For example, if I have a top growing table and that table is not growing, then that's not a potential candidate, right? The
table that is rapidly growing. The rising star is who you are after.
Yes,
right?
So those are all the key things which we need to address them. Otherwise, you don't have a control on your database.
Absolutely.
That's how it starts.
Okay. And then
the next step is, once the top growing tables are identified, I need to pick up the archiving object, right, associated to those tables. So once the archiving object is identified, then I need to define what is my storage media, where I'm going to store the archived data. It's just not only removing the data out of your SAP system, right? Potentially the data need to be easily accessible for any audit references, right? So then I need a platform. So the moment I decide top growing table, the moment I identify the archiving object, the core critical component is where I'm going to keep those, where the archived data is safely, compliantly stored, right? and then it is easily available for the user
So
when
can
there is a
a
need.
single table be associated with more than one archiving object?
Yes.
In which case, how would you choose the right archiving
Yeah,
object?
let's say when I have finance objects and the controlling object, right? Sometimes there is a interconnect between both the archiving object, right? So when you pick the archiving object, SAP is by design, it keeps track of all the relationships intact. So all we need is identify which is your top header table, and there I will pick it up and then start the archiving so that it reduces your overall data footprint in your existing SAP system.
How does this archiving object translate the data into the storage medium?
It's a standard ADK format plus and minus as well, right? Why? Because ADK is a typical standard way of compressing and storing it in the archived data, right? So then when you wanted to retrieve the files which are data which are stored in the ADK file, obviously you need SAP platform, right? So that's where the challenge is.
That's typically SAP, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's a tight bound between your ADK files and your front end, right? So sometimes that's a bottleneck as well, right?
See, that boils me a lot, this ADK files, right? Now, it's amazingly efficient design because it's seamless. People can still access the data.
Yeah.
Nothing changes. They don't have to worry about what they're archiving. Just archive it, right?
Absolutely.
It gets out of your system, helps your performance, but you cannot access the data outside.
Yes.
The data is still controlled by your system.
Correct.
Now, where does this pose a problem with?
So obviously it means that though you are removing the data from your database and keeping your historical data in ADK format, but at the end when you wanted to access it, still you are slightly depending on the SAP front end, right?
I want to talk about this a little more. See, we had one customer who wanted to move out of SAP. We have several customers who want to get into HANA. This ADK-based archiving poses a challenge because you still need the ECC system to access the data, right? Or you have to go through an extraordinary service effort to migrate all of this to HANA or to the archive.
Yeah.
I feel like that is the biggest disadvantage of going with the conventional SAP process. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's true, especially when it comes to a SAP legacy environment, let's say ECC5 or prior to that. That's where the standard archiving got some kind of, I will not say it's a negative architecture, but that's what it by design, right? Which is
it is good in some
problem.
ways.
Exactly.
See, any design has its benefits and its negatives. The biggest negative of this is that you cannot, and another use case is that one of our customers said that they have an analytics requirement where they have to consume data between two archiving objects.
Yeah.
And for that, to run this, they have to basically restore everything into temp tables and then run their analytics. It's extraordinarily time consuming and not efficient, right?
Yeah.
Now, how does ADS solve this problem?
ADS got a unique way of addressing this problem. Yeah. Two ways of doing it. One, as we spoke about ADK file, so I'll touch base that. Right, when you have a ADK file which is already contains some historical data, and obviously at the end of the day you are going to decommission your SAP environment, right? So then what I'm going to do with the ADK, right? So that's where Archon plays a key role, that Archon recognize the ADK, by having a custom developed programs which takes out your ADK content into a Archon platform. So once it moves to the Archon platform, Archon does everything, right? Meaning it can play as a user interfaces, right? It can provide a beautiful reporting, a query capability, and compliance, data governance, everything is possible. So that's one way.
But can SAP still access the data from, can users still access the data from within SAP?
Yes, if I have ADK files stored in Archon, then by default, if you have
SAP can talk to
SAP
ADS.
can talk to ADS
Yes, yes,
because
yes.
we have a built-in connectors and through archive link, that is obviously it is there. Yeah.
But I feel the biggest advantage of ADS is not just this; it's the ability to apply compliance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
See, we talked about the disadvantages of what SAP is archiving is, and I feel the biggest challenge is this can get really big really fast. We
Yeah.
have seen customers who chose a shared drive as their storage medium
Yeah.
and then have millions literally of
Yep.
ADK files without having any clue of how to restore them,
Yes.
what to do even with them. Right now,
Yes.
they could have been purged, but they just don't know what to purge. And
Yep.
because of that reason, now they have 20 terabytes, 25
Yes.
terabytes
Yep.
of just files sitting where they have no clue. And with ADS, you can tag these files, these ADK files with retention policies,
Yes.
which means they get purged
Yes.
after their retention period.
Correct. And adding to that, the biggest, what do you call that, plus what I can say is when we use Archon, along with the ADK files, we bring in the metadata as well.
The relevant metadata.
The relevant metadata, right? So that helps you in keeping your data intact with your structured and unstructured data, right? So it's easy to manage the way you want it, right? So at the end of the day, the end user doesn't feel the data is being accessed from SAP or Archon because it is coming the way they want it. Yeah.
Very true.
That's a key.
Now, SAP ILM, the ILM framework also supports retention capability,
Yes.
right? What do you see is the difference, or how would you compare that with a solution like Archon Data Store?
What I see is SAP ILM. It's a native governance to manage the retention framework. Yeah, but they are very strong in that, right? But when it comes to Archon, first thing, it simplifies the whole process.
Very true.
Yeah, including the compliance retention, and moreover, if I use ILM framework, and again it has a dependency on a content repository.
Yep.
Right. So once again, the content repository should be ILM compliant. Yeah. So all these are very tightly tied up and got a lot of dependencies. Yeah.
Very true.
When it comes to Archon, it's one stop. Yeah, where it completely manages the ILM framework, and as well as it acts as a content repository. So it combines both basically. That's
true.
the key.
Very
Yeah.
true. But see, a lot of the data growth in SAP is related to storing documents or content in tables like the softcon tables, right? Now that possesses a unique challenge in archiving too.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
So you're talking about unstructured data in terms of
in
attachments.
tables.
Yeah. See, normally, based on my previous experiences, the solution is having a content repository by default to store the unstructured data outside SAP. But in a real time, what's happening is people, the end user perspective, they wanted to store the attachment. And then they choose different options, right? Some attachments are coming through Fiori app, some attachments going to DMS, some attachments going to softcon table, some attachments. So in real time, the attachments or the unstructured data is spreaded across multiple
3 or 4
locations,
systems at least,
multiple
right?
locations, and nobody when they see why the database is blown up, why the size is too big, then the analysis, then they start doing what's happening, right? Why the softcon table is so much of huge terabytes, right?
Right.
So now, that's how it's. So it's not basically an organized way of storing data. So that's why the best practices, what it says is that once you define your unstructured data should be stored outside your SAP, then all the associated document types, irrespective it's finance or sales or whatever, scanned images, all must be stayed out of your SAP environment to keep your environment neat and clean. Yeah,
True.
That's how this unstructured data need to be managed.
And also, there are specific content managers that manage unstructured data from SAP.
Yes.
How does ADS compare to them, or where do you use what?
So typically, if I use any of the traditional content
Let's say
server,
OpenText or MaxDB or one of them.
Yeah,
right?
so any content server if you use, then that particular content server is one. Those are all associated with SAP licensing part.
Right.
And the second thing is...
what do you mean by that? The cost is higher?
The cost is higher.
Yeah.
The cost is higher.
Yeah.
And let's say, typically if you say, for an example, content server always runs with MaxDB. And managing the MaxDB, it's complicated. It's a bit difficult when it comes to, managing your disaster recovery situation or something like that, right? So it's always choose a content repository which is always, unique and common for both SAP and non-SAP platforms. So that always add value to your solutioning. Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little about these Z tables, right? Custom tables. They also pose a very unique problem when you're talking about SAP archiving, right?
Yes.
See, I have seen customers who have more Z table data than in regular transaction tables. It's just very common, right? How do you deal with managing Z tables and how do you archive? Or is there a strategy that SAP provides for this?
Usually, SAP always stays out of the recommendation for Z table, because they think it's completely custom driven, right?
Very true.
And it's a bit difficult for SAP to analyze what is happening. So that's why
too, right?
always they stay away from the custom objects, right? And in practically, let's say if when we have a Z program or associated with the Z table, the data what is getting into that Z table is not clearly monitored, right? For example, when I have a standard tables, there is a mechanism where I can closely watch what is happening, right? In terms of DVM reports or EW report, whatever, right? It gives you clear
indication
picture. But these Z tables are it's a silent killer, right? It always keeps aside, and then it grows, right? And all of a sudden, when someone asks what's happening, because most of the Z table doesn't have a clear documentation what it holds, because it was built some time ago to fill some process gap, right? And nobody touched it, right? Now when it goes to S/4HANA migration, RISE and all these things, then the box got opened and then got into trouble. Now the question is, what am I going to do, right? Typically, SAP is also providing a way of archiving the custom tables, but in my experience, it's not that easy.
Very true.
Yeah. Why? Because you need to know the complete history of the Z table and its relationship, metadata, everything. But when I have Archon in place, then all I wanted to do is run our analyzer and then just check what is that tables and how it is associated.
It just makes it so much
and then
easier.
simply I can move out of your SAP environment and keep it in the Archon. Yep.
So overall, SAP archiving itself comes with its own set of unique challenges, right? And its own set of unique solutions too. And for me, the experience that you bring in with your decades of experience doing SAP, the expertise that we together have on the archiving space has helped a lot of customers, and I hope we can continue to help more and more customers manage these challenges with SAP. And the SAP archiving world is just opening up with the ECC to HANA.
Absolutely.
Anything you would like to add before we conclude the session today?
One thing wanted to conclude here is any SAP customers, right, thinking that archiving is the last step, right? So that's where the problem starts, right? So
it's the first step.
It's a first step, and it's mandatory to keep your business run smoothly and efficiently. Yeah.
Very true.
So it's mandatory. It's not an optional.
Very good food for thought. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening in, and I hope you had some useful information today. Thanks, Jagadeesh.
Thanks, Karkavel.
Let's talk archival.